everyone, it's Gladius. So this week we got a lot of news with Diablo 4. We learned about battle passes, how often we're getting story content, and also exactly how much content is going to be inside those battle passes. We got a bunch to go over, so let's go ahead and get right into it. If we take a look at the Game Informer interview first, we found out that we're actually going to be getting quarterly updates with Diablo. This is going to include story beat content and also going to have the battle passes attached to them. After the interview, Rod Fergusson did have to come out and post this on Twitter, explaining that the quest lines are not going to be a part of the main campaign, but rather introduce the new content like seasonal mechanics. The story that Joe P refers to in Seasons are new quest lines that help to provide context to new seasonal mechanics, not a new campaign. So these are going to be things that introduce the new seasonal affixes or whatever they decide to do to switch up, just those new features that are coming with each of the season updates. And again, these are quarterly, so the delivery on these is going to be a lot faster than what we got with like Diablo 3, for example. This kind of gives me the vibe of maybe like Kanai's Cube, how we had a quest line to go get the cube at the start of the season that they released Kanai's Cube. I'm not sure on this, but I guess like Rod Fergusson said in the tweet there, we're going to get more information about this down the road, so we'll revisit it in the future. Now, something else we learned from Game Informer is that the quarterly content updates are going to include a season pass on top of the free season pass. The premium season pass will cost $10, and that's going to come out again with each of those quarterly updates. And this is just reiterating what we learned back in December. Next, the development team revealed 2 Nightmare Dungeon affixes, also called Afflictions, in game. So the first one, we have like an invincible lightning pillar that's going to chase players all around the dungeon. So players will be challenged to use their evasion skills and movement abilities to try to get away from this this pillar of lightning that's chasing them. Doesn't seem like it's something that can actually be slain or fought, but is just something that needs to be avoided. And then the second one was kind of the same idea of running away from this shade that's going to spawn, and then it's going to chase you down, and if it touches you, it summons a bunch of additional monsters for you to fight. It's cool to see these affixes that are going to add a little bit of a threatening opposing force that you have to run away from. It's so much more interesting than just increased damage by X amount, or just a % increase on health of the monsters and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully they incorporate some of the stuff they learned from doing affixes in World of Warcraft and just add a little bit more interesting things to make these Nightmare Dungeons really pop off and have some cool mechanics to them. Now, they talked a little bit more about Helltides as well. So for those who don't know what Helltide events are, Helltide is a unique event that completely transforms an area of Sanctuary and fills it with powerful demons and enticing loot. It also gives a rare opportunity to find Fiend Roses, which can be used to customize your legendary gear, and the shards can open up Helltide chests, which are going to have like a superior loot. For the World of Warcraft players, think like Primal Storms, like there's a big event going on in an area and a reason to go to that area to be able to take part in the event. So we're going to have more than one area being affected by a Helltide at once. It's not just going to be one area or restricted to one area. There's going to be various encounters inside these zones, including boss monsters and a variation on the boss fights that you can find elsewhere in the game. It's great to see these gameplay details and start piecing together exactly what the game's going to be looking like. I would love to get more information about exactly how much they're changing things up with this seasons. Now, if we jump over to the Inven interview, this one is a Korean publication. I was able to piece together from some other websites a translation of some of the major points that were touched on. First of all, we're talking about account-wide renown rewards. So this is going to be like your skill points that you get, Paragon points. Again, we don't know a whole lot about Paragon points, but Paragon points that you get, obols in the maximum amount you can hold, and then potion charges as well. These will be reset with each of the seasons. I know there's been a lot of talk about how much we want our account to be reset and how much we want to repeat some of these things, or actually more like how we don't want to repeat things like the statues of Lilith. Well, they actually did mention specifically the statues of Lilith. We are not going to need to do again and again with each season's start. It looks like, according to Joe Piepiora, we are going to be able to keep the bonuses gained from the altars of Lilith, and they will not reset with a new season. So this is going to help us not have to run around and click on a bunch of altars of Lilith at the start of each season. So 4 times a year, we won't have to make that trek. I'm glad to see this. I know that in World of Warcraft, we've had a little bit of trouble with repeating content and having to do grinding content again and again for each of our additional characters. And it's great to see Blizzard kind of passing its lessons from one game to another and not having a bunch of unnecessarily lengthy, repeatable content that just doing for the sake of doing it. And I'm always happy. I'm a big proponent of removing some of that repetition content that's not really enjoyable. We're looking at Wccftech and their interview that they had. First, we're talking about the Paragon board. So the Paragon board can be maxed out, but it's going to take a really, really long time to do so. This is a big change from the way Paragon points work in Diablo 3. In Diablo 3, it's an infinitely scaling point system where you can just keep getting more and more and more Paragon levels. It looks like in this case, we are going to have an end, but it's not reasonable to expect a player to reach the end of the Paragon board in a season. So we'll have to see if that's something achievable by players. This would be the first time that players have surprised devs on what is actually possible. So we'll see about that. If we switch over and talk a little bit about the skill tree, they did touch on the skill tree. And there's many different perspectives on this, but basically there's a group of players fighting for more control and freedom when it comes to respecs, and then other players saying that there should be more of a weight behind your decisions. The devs are leaning on the side of more making it weighted decisions where it's going to be very expensive to respec. And it was mentioned a while ago in a dev interview that they said that it would actually be better at some point to just restart a new character completely than to try to respec a character. This sentiment seems to be reevaluated with the beta. We were able to pretty much respec at will. Now, is that something that's going to be scaling with level? Is it something that's going to be scaling with the amount of times that you respec? We'll have to wait and see. Now, the question is how much freedom we're going to have in respecking our Paragon board. My understanding of Piepiora's answer here is that the skill level is going to determine our build. And by the time we get to our Paragon board, we've determined our whole skill path that we want to go down. And now once we get to the Paragon board, it's the icing on the cake. We're finally connecting the final dots and the final connections together. And at this point, I don't think we're going to be making any major changes to our build. That's at least my understanding of this. So this may imply that there might not be a major opportunity to respec your entire Paragon board, but only time will tell. Now, as we switch over to the PC Gamer interview, we're going to talk more about the vision and the idea behind Diablo 4 from a broad perspective. There's been a lot of talk about Diablo 4 being basically an MMO in all but the title. In this interview, Blizzard did double down on their commitment to keeping Diablo 4 as an action RPG game first and not an MMO first, stating that their goal is to have local events and things pop up alongside other players to make it the world of Sanctuary feel a lot bigger. And doing this, they're not looking to betray the core principles that make an action RPG an action RPG. Developers mentioned that everybody is sort of a damage dealer. And what this means is that they're not going to include the Holy Trinity system. That's not a goal of theirs. They're not looking to have a healer, tank, and DPS characters. They're looking to have mainly just damage dealer characters, as it's been in the past with other ARPGs. And I don't think in making this statement, it precludes players from being able to build a more supportive type build. In the past Diablo games and in other ARPGs, we have seen builds that focus on more group play and strengthening group members than it does focus on self buffs and things like that. I don't imagine this quote is saying that you can't have something more built in that way, but we'll have to see once we can see the full power of specs and all the legendaries available in the game. It's nice to see Blizzard committed to the vision of an action RPG and not letting too many of the MMO aspects leak into the game, though I'm really interested in seeing how they toe this line. World events, social aspects really has me interested to see where they're going to keep going with straddling the line between MMO and action RPG. So far, I think they've done a great job with that. Finally, we got more information about the season's journey and the season's pass, and how long players can expect to take to complete the content. It looks like it's going to be about 80 hours. That's going to be 80 hours of content coming out at a quarterly rate. And they also mentioned that getting to level 100 could take even longer than that, and that just depends on how much you play, of course. I'm actually really surprised to see at the amount of content that's going to be released with the season passes. 80 hours is quite a bit. That's quite a decent amount of content coming out 4 times a year. I'll be interested to see how much of that is real fleshed out content versus repeatable things. So there you have it. We have 4 news outlets coming out with an interview, and the pieces are starting to come together. We're starting to understand a little bit more about what the content rotation is going to look like in Diablo 4. What did you think about this? Does this make you more excited about Diablo? Do you think 80 hours of content coming out on a quarterly basis, is that too much? Is that too little? What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. If the video helped you out today, please consider bashing that like button. And if you want to stay tuned for more Diablo 4 content in the future, please bring your Hammer of the Ancients down on the subscribe button as well. I appreciate your time today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.